My name is Emily Carter, and for most of my life I was known as the responsible one in my family. Not the brightest, not the loudest, just the one who made sure things got done. I grew up in a modest home in Portland, Oregon, with a teacher mum, a construction engineer dad, and a younger sister named Rachel, who was always the star. While she was praised for her charm and creativity, I quietly excelled in academics, worked part-time jobs, and helped cover bills without ever being asked. Rachel pursued fashion, swapped majors 3 times, and eventually wanted to open a boutique cafe, which I funded with my savings. I didn't mind helping, I just hoped she'd remember. Once I gifted Dad a smartwatch engraved with his name. He thanked Rachel, thinking she bought it. Mom chuckled and moved on. That moment hit me hard. They didn't need to know who helped, they just needed someone likable to point to, and that someone wasn't me. I had a solid job as a product director, lived alone, never married, and returned home for holidays with gifts and money. Still, I longed just once for Mom to say, "Thank you, Emily," but it never came. On Mom's 60th birthday, I planned everything: a cozy restaurant, custom cake, full payment up front, just to make it special. And yet, during the dinner, Rachel raised her wine glass and toasted me as "Our CEO of depression makes the most money, but no one knows what she likes. Thanks for paying for all this." The room burst into laughter. I didn't. I stood up and announced that from that day on I'd no longer be covering bills, paying for school, or supporting anyone without being asked or appreciated. I paid my share and left. That night, group chats exploded, none asking if I was okay, only judging me for overreacting. I opened my Excel sheet, where I'd tracked 7 years of financial support, and added the final line: Mom's birthday party, $725, support withdrawn. I didn't cry, I felt light. For once, I had protected myself. Days passed, more guilt messages came in. Still, no apologies, no reimbursements, just silence and the assumption I'd come around. But I didn't. I deleted the auto payments, renamed the file Family Load Lifted, and sent them a summary of every payment I'd ever made, almost $20,000 over the years. Rachel's reply: "Wow, you really keep track. Guess I should have declined. No remorse, just entitlement. I visited a lawyer friend to set up a legal trust for my parents' home, ensuring it couldn't be sold, mortgaged, or accessed by Rachel again. My parents could live there peacefully, but no one could exploit it. I wasn't being cruel. I was creating boundaries. When Mom asked if I did it because I stopped loving them, I said no, I did it to protect what little was left. Rachel showed up at my place weeks later, accusing me of wanting to control her. I calmly showed her credit card charges she made after I'd said no more. She fell silent. "I thought you'd always be there," she whispered. "And I thought you'd grow up," I said. She asked what she had left now. "Whatever you build yourself," I told her. She left. And for the first time in years, I slept deeply. No texts, no guilt, no weight. 2 weeks later, a handwritten note from Mom arrived. "I'm not saying you're wrong. I just wish I'd seen how tired you were." I folded it and filed it not under debts, but under things understood. I didn't hate my family. I just stepped out of the role they cast me in without asking. I wasn't angry at Rachel. I just stopped letting her step on my kindness. I wasn't lonely. I was finally alone in the healthiest way. If you've ever carried more than your share in silence, hoping someone would know this, letting go isn't abandonment. It's choosing to live lighter, freer, and more honestly. A week after that birthday dinner, while reviewing my bank statements, I noticed unfamiliar transactions on a secondary account I had once set up for emergencies, an account linked to a supplementary card I'd given my mum years ago to help with bills like utilities or medical expenses. I had made it clear it was for essentials only. But in the last 2 weeks, that card had been used at a luxury spa in downtown Seattle, a high-end cosmetic store, and a boutique Rachel often bragged about on social media. The final straw? A weekend resort stay in Napa, booked under her name. I stared at the screen. Not angry, just cold. Cold like steel. I had already pulled back. I had drawn a line. But they didn't stop. They kept seeing me not as a person, but as a resource. No questions, no permissions, just withdrawal. That night I sat in silence. No lights, no noise, just a cup of ginger tea in my hands and the sound of my breath. For the first time, I didn't ask myself if I should forgive. I didn't wonder if maybe Mom didn't know, or if Rachel didn't mean to. I only thought one thing: enough. This wasn't about being unappreciated. It was about being exploited. It wasn't about being asked to help. It was about being taken for granted, as if my boundaries were negotiable. I reached out to Maya, an old college friend who's now a civil attorney, specializing in personal asset protection and family trusts. I told her everything not because I wanted revenge, but because I needed to break the cycle. After hearing me out, she said something I'll never forget. You don't have to cut them off, but you need to take back control, not to punish, but to survive. 3 weeks later, everything was finalized. I legally bought my parents' house in Portland, the same one with the faded Home Sweet Home sign where Rachel and I grew up. I didn't buy it to live there. I bought it so no one else could take advantage of them again, including Rachel. The house was placed in a trust, jointly overseen by me and a neutral financial trustee. My parents could live there for the rest of their lives, but they could no longer mortgage, sell, or alter ownership, and Rachel had no legal access. I mailed them a letter, short and direct. From now on, all household and financial matters will be legally managed. No more calls, no more requests, no more favors. When they arrived to sign the documents, my father read every page without saying a word. My mother asked, "Did you do this because you're angry at Rachel because you stopped caring about us?" I replied, "I did this because one day you might be too old to notice when someone is using you, and I won't let this home become collateral for someone else's mistakes." They said nothing more. We signed. There were no hugs, no thank yous, just dried ink and a closed chapter. That night, I returned to my apartment, poured a small glass of wine. I never drank much before, but I needed to mark the moment. I stood by the window overlooking the city lights. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like a pillar. I felt like a designer of my own life. No more holding up, no more fixing. Just building brick by brick, boundary by boundary, the kind of life that didn't require me to break in order to be loved. I didn't expect to see Rachel again so soon, especially not on a rainy Saturday afternoon when I was folding laundry in the living room and the doorbell rang 3 times sharp, impatient, familiar. I looked through the peephole. It was her. No makeup, hoodie pulled tight over her head, dark circles under her eyes. She looked small. I hesitated, then opened the door. "Come in," I said. She walked past me like she owned the place, like nothing had ever happened. She sat on the couch, arms crossed, not meeting my eyes. I poured 2 glasses of water, set one down in front of her. She didn't touch it. The silence was heavy. Finally, she spoke. "You did all this just to humiliate me?" Her voice cracked at the edges. I shook my head. "I didn't do it for you. I did it for myself. I was done being used." Her lips curled into a half smile, half snarl. "Right, because you're so noble. Always the martyr. Always paying your way into everyone's life." I didn't flinch. I had heard this narrative before. "No one asked you to save us, Emily. You volunteered. Then you got bitter when we didn't clap." I leaned forward, calm but firm. "Rachel, this isn't about applause. It's about respect. You used my emergency account without asking. You spent my retirement money on a spa weekend. That's not family. That's theft." Her eyes widened slightly. "I didn't know it was." "You did," I interrupted. "You just didn't care." She slumped back into the couch, defeated. "I thought you'd always be there. And I thought you'd eventually grow up." The words hung between us. She bit her lip. "So what now? You've locked me out of everything. You gave Mom and Dad the house, but built a legal wall around it. Is that your way of erasing me?" I sighed. "Remember, I didn't erase you. I stopped enabling you. There's a difference." She looked away. For a moment, I saw something in her face, shame maybe, or fear. "I'm trying," she whispered. "Trying what?" I asked. "To be someone you don't have to carry." I nodded slowly. "Good. Because I'm done carrying anyone who refuses to walk." She stood up, fidgeted with the sleeve of her hoodie. "Do you hate me?" I met her eyes, steady and soft. "Number, but I love myself more now. That's the part you'll have to get used to." She didn't reply. She walked to the door, paused, and looked back like she wanted to say something else but didn't. The door closed behind her with a quiet finality. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I just stood there, breathing. For years I'd been waiting for that moment, waiting for her to understand, to apologize, to see me. But maybe the point wasn't waiting anymore. Maybe the point was moving on, whether or not they ever caught up. That night, I took out my old journal and wrote one sentence. Today, I spoke for the version of me that was always too quiet. Then I went to sleep. No guilt, no weight on my chest, just the quiet warmth of knowing I was finally living on my own terms.
2 weeks passed, and life fell into a quiet rhythm that felt unfamiliar but necessary. No texts from Rachel, no calls from Mom. The family group chat remained unchanged. I hadn't been added back. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel anxious about it. I brewed coffee every morning without checking for notifications. I read books on my tiny balcony, listening to the hum of downtown Portland, without thinking about who needed me. I learned how to water my plants without overdoing "it turns out." Peace needs space, not constant pouring. I stopped auto transfers to my parents and instead deposited a fixed amount into the trust I'd created, monitored by a third party, with no emotional strings attached. I wasn't a silent donor anymore. I was someone with boundaries, and it felt like freedom. One day, I found a letter in my mailbox, handwritten, the familiar left-leaning script of my mother. It read, "Emily, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just sorry it took this long for me to see how tired you were. I'm not asking you to come back. I just hope that someday we can sit at the same table again with nothing owed between us. Love, Mom." I read it 3 times. I didn't cry. I didn't call her. I simply folded it and placed it in a new folder I'd labelled Things Finally Understood. As for Rachel, I heard through a cousin that she had moved in with a friend and was trying out part-time jobs. Though nothing stuck for long, I wasn't surprised. Some lessons need more than consequences. They need silence to echo. And this time, I wasn't cushioning the fall. I wasn't checking in, or asking around, or fixing anything behind the scenes. I had stepped back so she could finally step up. Occasionally, people asked, "You're really not talking to your sister?" But she's family. I'd smile and reply, "I used to be her sister, but she didn't treat me like one. Now, I treat myself like someone worth protecting." I learned something powerful in those months. Forgiveness doesn't mean inviting chaos back into your life. Love doesn't mean surrendering your peace. Family doesn't mean unpaid labor masked as loyalty. One crisp Saturday afternoon, I walked past a family taking photos on the street near Pioneer Courthouse Square. They were laughing, arms around each other, matching red scarves for the holidays. For a brief second, I wondered what it would feel like to be part of that. But instead of feeling a sting of longing, I felt calm. I didn't miss what I never truly had. I had created my own table, small, steady, quiet. And the people who sat at it were those who knew how to give as well as receive. I hadn't abandoned my family. I'd simply retired from the role of being their emotional and financial backbone. I hadn't become cold. I'd just stopped apologizing for choosing warmth that didn't burn me. I wasn't bitter. I was clear. I wasn't lonely. I was finally alone in the healthiest, fullest way. And that clarity? It didn't come from rage or revenge. It came from the quiet decision to no longer live a life that constantly asked me to shrink. I had shed the costume, stepped off the stage, and walked into the light of a life where I no longer had to perform to be loved.
I thought I was done. I truly believed the silence was the end of the story, that everyone had gone back to their lives, carrying their versions of what happened. But one Friday evening, as golden light spilled across my kitchen floor, the doorbell rang. It was Rachel. I hadn't seen her in months. Her eyes were puffy, her hair pulled into a lazy bun, hoodie oversized like she was hiding from the worlder herself. I opened the door, said nothing, just stepped aside. She walked in slowly, as if the air inside weighed more. She sat on the edge of the couch, fidgeting with her sleeves. I poured 2 cups of tea. This time she drank it. A long pause stretched between us before she finally spoke. "I lost the job at the beauty store." I nodded. "They said I wasn't consistent, that I don't show up when it matters." She let out a soft laugh, empty brittle. I hated hearing it, but they weren't wrong. I listened. No rescuing, no fixing, just silence that made space for truth. "I blamed you, you know," she continued, "for making me feel small, for putting up walls. But it wasn't your walls that hurt, it was the mirror you held up." Her voice cracked. You've always been everything I couldn't be, and instead of learning from you, I resented you for making it look so easy." I looked at her, no longer with the eyes of an older sister desperate for connection, but with the quiet recognition of someone who had already grieved what should have been. "It was never easy," I said gently. "You just never looked past your reflection to see me." She wiped her eyes. "Do you hate me?" "No," I said, "but I don't owe you anything, and you don't owe me redemption. We start from where we are here, not at all." She nodded slowly. "I'm not here to ask for money or help. I'm here because I needed to hear myself say it. I messed up. That was the first honest sentence I'd heard from her in years. No spin, no performance. Just the raw ache of accountability. "Thank you," I said. She got up, paused at the door. "Do you think we'll ever be close again?" I met her eyes. "Maybe. But not if we're still trying to recreate what never really worked. If we do it right, it won't look like before. It'll be smaller, slower, real." She gave a faint smile. "That's fair." Then she left. No hug, no promises, just the soft closing of a door and a version of her I'd never seen before, unsure, humbled, human. That night, I didn't journal or sip wine by the window. I just stood in the middle of my living room, hands wrapped around my tea, and realized something important. Sometimes healing isn't loud. It doesn't come with confessions or fireworks. Sometimes it arrives in the form of someone finally telling the truth, not to win you back, but to face themselves. And that's where real closure lives, not in reunions, but in reckonings. Some rebirths don't begin with a bang, but with a whisper, a quiet unfolding. Months passed, and the silence I once feared became the space where I began to breathe fully. I didn't reconcile with my family in any dramatic way. There were no big reunions or tearful apologies. But one day, Dad sent a photo of the garden I helped fund years ago. It was blooming again. Mom texted a recipe she thought I'd like. Rachel commented on one of my sketches with just a heart emoji. And I didn't need more than that. Because healing wasn't about them saying sorry, it was about me no longer waiting for it. I began hosting small dinners in my apartment, inviting friends who felt like sunshine. We ate slow meals, shared hard truths, and laughed with the kind of joy that doesn't require performance. I no longer needed to be the dependable one. I just needed to be me. I wasn't the family's problem solver anymore. I was an artist, a woman with boundaries, a human learning softness after years of survival. My life didn't become perfected, became mine. And in that quiet ownership, I discovered the most radical form of love. Not the kind that sacrifices to be seen, but the kind that allows you to see yours clearly, wholly, and without shame. There are moments in life when the most courageous thing you can do is stop. Stop pleasing. Stop proving. Stop pouring into cups that never fill yours back. This story isn't just about one woman and her family. It's about all of us who've carried more than we were meant to, in silence, hoping someone might finally notice. But the truth is, healing doesn't come when they see you. It comes when you do. When you choose to step out of the role you were never meant to play. When you stop being the strong one and start being the honest one. You are not selfish for setting boundaries. You are not cold for choosing peace. And you are not ungrateful for finally asking, "What about me?" Sometimes love means walking away. Sometimes Family means letting go. And sometimes freedom begins the moment you stop apologizing for who you've become. If this story touched you, leave a comment below, share your experience, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that speak to the part of you that's been quiet too long. Wishing you peace, strength, and a soft return to yourself.